Can you all hear me? Hello?
Hey, Ben,
We
we
can
can hear
hear
you.
Hey, everyone.
Oh,
Beautiful morning to make lives better for everyone.
We can hear you and see you.
Ready to go, Commissioner Williams.
Can you
All
all hear
right,
me?
we're gonna go ahead and
Yeah, he's still.
we're gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. Attorney Brown, go ahead and get it started.
Good morning, Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners. We'll request a motion to go into executive session for the discussion of personnel, litigation, and real estate.
So move.
Second.
All right, voting, Ms.
Four.
Bonner.
That's Mr. Dennis Williams and Mr. John Clark. Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum. Out. Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Son,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias. Out. Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries with Mr. Franum and Mr. Sias out.
All right, yeah, move us to legal. We're back on the floor.
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Attorney.
Mayor Pro Tem Commissioners will request a motion to execute the closed meeting affidavit.
So moved.
Second.
Third.
That's Mr. Garrett and Mr. Sias.
Yes, sir. Let's vote, Ms. Bonner.
Okay. Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum, out. Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sun,
Yeah.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Miss McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes.
That motion carries with Mr. Franum out.
Mr. Brown, you should have a motion.
Yes, sir. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem, we will request a motion to authorize the re-execution of a quitclaim deed from Augusta, Georgia to William S. Jackson Jr. regarding 113th Street, Augusta, Georgia.
So moved.
Second.
Voting, Ms. Bonner.
Okay, Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum, out. Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sun,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries with Mr. Franum out.
Mr. Brown. Yes,
Mayor
hang on a
Pro Tem.
sec. Yes, sir.
After we get this item read in, I have one question. I couldn't find the most recent copy that we received, so I have one question about the contract once we get it read into the agenda.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Brown.
Yes, sir. Our last motion for today would be, we will request a motion to approve a 3-year contract for Scott Roundtree as Chief Appraiser for the Board of Tax Assessor with an annual salary of $140,000 a year,
moved.
$500 a month car allowance, and COLAs as granted by the Augusta, Georgia Commission.
So
Second.
moved.
Okay,
All
can
right.
can we get, that was kind of jumbled.
That was
I can-
Is that motion? I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll repeat it. The motion,
I have the motion. I just need to know who moved for it.
oh,
A
okay.
second.
Garrett with the motion and John Clark with the second.
Okay.
But let me recognize Commissioner Sides for a question.
Thank you. I
Okay.
just need to ask the attorney something real quick.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Attorney, I heard you mention the COLA and the other raise issues, but maybe I was mistaken, but did you clear that part up about the voluntary severance pay for voluntary resignation?
There is no provision regarding any kind of pay for voluntary resignation. Mr. Scott Roundtree or the chief appraisers are no longer an SES employee under Augusta's personnel procedures. The prior chief appraiser was grandfathered in from the initial, but as of the revisions of our procedures, the chief appraiser is not an SES employee.
So what you're saying then is he's not eligible for one anyway. So did we take that out of the contract or did you just leave it in there?
No, it's out.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm good.
All
Mayor
right.
Pro Tem. Thank you.
Okay, voting.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum's out. Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries with Mr. Franum out.
Ms. Bonner, is there anything on the
Mr.
site? Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Can you, to Jeff, ask Jeff, can he check, the system? Because I've gotten stuff, messages saying that people, that we are all kind of jumble and bubbling, jumble up, but hard to hear, when we go out and try to let them check the system.
I think that's mostly you, Mr. Hassan, but Jeff, can you hear us?
I'll
You-
give
you-
Mr. Hassan a call.
Okay, all right. Ms. Bonner, is there anything else?
No, sir.
Be careful what you ask for.
Well, let's-
Let's just be nice. He doesn't really mean it. We're done.
Okay. All right, we're gonna turn it over to committees. Public services first.
No, sir.
No.
One.
Can't go now.
1:00.
What there?
1
1
o'clock.
p.m.
We can't go now?
We
No,
go
we
with
gotta go eat
lunch.
first.
You paying?
Mayor Pro Tem, that don't stand for dictator, that stand for Mayor Pro Tem.
Let me tell you something. I'm just used to being in the meeting 3 hours. That's all it is. We just go from one to another. Okay, 1 o'clock.
We on-
Go take a
We on the
break.
floor, people.
See you at
Yes,
1.
sir. Go. 1 o'clock. All right, we'll see you at
See
1
that,
o'clock.
people?
Wow. I think we're on the floor. Ms. Bonner,
Yes, sir.
do we have anything before us that you need to clear up or what have you?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Franum is here to begin public services.
All right, we're ready, Mr. Franum.
All right. I'd like to call public services to order. Any additions or deletions to the agenda, Ms. Bonner?
No, sir.
Okay. Is there any consensus on any of the agenda items between committee members?
Run through it,
Give me
Mr.
consent number 3, Mr. Chairman.
Run through it.
Commissioner Size, can you repeat that?
I said, run through it. It'll be quick.
All right. Ms. Walton, are you ready in?
It should be. Yes, sir.
He's coming in now.
All right, Ms. Bonner, agenda item number 1, please.
Okay. Ms. Walton?
Good afternoon. We have one applicant, alcohol number 21-08. It's a request for Lisa Ehrenbach for a retail package beer and wine license to be used in connection with Food Lion number 2860, located at 2803 Wrightsboro Road. This application has been approved by the Sheriff's Department and Planning and Development. There were no objectors to this application.
Thank you, Ms. Walton.
To approve.
She could please state her name and address for the record.
Lisa Fehrenbach, 4108 Englewood Drive, Martinez, Georgia.
Thank you, ma'am. Got a motion. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Is
Got a
that
motion
Mr.
and a
Johnson?
second? Yes, ma'am. We can please
Okay.
vote.
Mr. Franum?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias?
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
Ms.
Pro
Bonner,
Tem.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Is
Pro
that Mr.
Tem.
Franum?
I'm not-
Oh, I'm sorry.
are you, Commissioner Size, you asking for Commissioner Bobby Williams?
No, I said, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm sorry, I did say that. Commissioner Franum.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Question, we consent item 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Well, that's what I was going for. Can I get a second to that?
Okay.
Second.
We got a motion and a second, Ms. Bonner, from Commissioner in District 1.
That's 2,
Voting,
3,
please.
4, and 5 consent.
Yes, ma'am.
3,
Okay,
4, and 5.
all right. Mr. Franum?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark?
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Sias?
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
All right, Ms. Bonner, agenda item number 6, please.
Item number 6 is a request recommend allowing Planning and Development Department to prepare an alcohol ordinance amendment and bring back to the commission as a proposal for approval to include indoor amusement and recreational gaming as an additional business type to be included as eligible for an incidental alcohol license.
Commissioner Jordan Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item is being brought before this committee to allow for certain business types to be able to apply for incidental alcohol licenses. As right now, certain businesses are not able to apply for these types of license. The idea behind it is that things, businesses like arcades, art studios, dance studios, indoor arcades, indoor activity centers will be able to serve beer and wine. They can make no more than 25% of the annual sales from the sales of the beer and wine. They cannot sell alcohol on Sunday. Alcohol sales must stop at 10 p.m. But this helps us retain and recruit more fun type of businesses into Augusta to be able to do things in a different light. If I'm not mistaken, is Mr. Sherman on? Is Mr. Sherman waiting?
If
I would
we
like
can
to
get, we'd like, if we
yield
can
some
get
time
him
to
here.
him.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've spoken to Mr. Sherman, and that's the recommendation that he brought back before us. But we want to be able to make sure that if a business wants to be able to offer these types of services, that they have at least the opportunity to apply. And so, Mr. Sherman, I'd like to maybe yield some time over to him, Mr. Chairman, to speak to this.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Mr. Sherman, please.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, so this is a type use that could fit in under the incidental alcohol sales. That's something that the commission approved, I guess, a couple of years ago to allow personal service establishments to offer beer and wine to the customers. And as Commissioner Johnson was saying, it's an incidental use. The dominant use is the personal service establishment. No more than 25% of the gross annual sales can come from the sale of alcohol.
Any questions from the colleagues? Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Got a motion from Commissioner Sias, a second from Commissioner Clark.
Okay.
Voting, please.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Clark,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Sias.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson, for bringing that forward. Any other agenda items on public services?
No, so that's it for me.
All right. That concludes public services. Thank you.
Mr.
fine.
Clark, are you ready or you?
Ready?
Oh,
I'd like to call public safety to order, please. And I would like to entertain a motion to consent items 1 and 2.
So moved.
Second.
okay, we have Commissioner Bobby Williams and Commissioner Dennis Williams and Brandon Garrett. Okay. Are we voting now, sir?
Vote, please.
Okay, Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Brandon Garrett.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously. Item number 3, sir.
Yes.
Discuss establish a working committee to create a MOU for future consideration with Gold Cross EMS, requested by Commissioner Ben Hassan.
Commissioner Hassan, proceed, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to say, my colleague yesterday giving me a call about this, Commissioner Clark in particular. I wanted some clarity around this and expressing his concerns about it. So I appreciate that very much. At the same time, that's why I put it on public safety as well as on the administrative services, so we could have that conversation. Because actually, I think it was more of an administrative service position than it was a public safety. But out of respect for the committee, that's why I done it for both of them. And what I really want to just talk about here is just talk about just about a week ago now, we received a draft MOU from Gold Cross that came to the city. I think we could administrator send it out to it, if I'm not mistaken. And the expiration date, the current MOU that we're into right now is in.
Yes, 1 second.
You want me to continue?
Yes, please.
I'm sorry. The current MOU that we're in now, it expires on December 31st in 22. So with that, it gives us ample time to do some things. And also the one that we currently have now is we got it by way of sitting down and negotiating with Gold Cross, where the city have an opportunity to do some things independent of Gold Cross. The person or the entity that was involved with that was the fire department, the finance department, administrative, legal, the mayor, Commissioner Jefferson, Commissioner Dennis Williams. A lot of time that Commissioner Bobby Williams took Commissioner Jefferson's position when he came on board. And so what we're just asking is trying to build a team and to build a system that we can realize and support and have some benchmarks so we can support ourselves moving forward as we enter to some type of agreement or arrangement with Gold Cross in the future. So that's why I was just saying at this particular time to allow us to be pushed to the Administrative Service Committee, and we can get that done. And we'll set that committee up and things of that nature. I can't make a motion on this particular committee, but I can make it on Administrative Services. And that's what I was asking for that, and not trying to, and as I expected, and let me say, go back for a minute, and expressing to Commissioner Clark yesterday that I didn't think any single committee, when it came to negotiating a MOU, would have the wherewithal, or should have the wherewithal to do that. I think that is a collective wishes of the body. And that's why I thought at the same time, because we're procuring a service. And when we're procuring a service here, normally procurement does come through the Administrative Service. The difference here is the commissioners are putting the finishing touch on what they would like to see that product look like. And so that's why I'm asking for it to go there.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Commissioner Garrett?
Thank you, Chairman. I have a question for the administrator or the attorney, if that's okay.
Proceed.
In discussions around whether this is a procurement or whether this is a single source procurement, what are the stipulations in regards to looking over this contract? And, you know, as we move forward with discussing this, what else do we need to look at?
So I'll defer to the attorney on whether it needs to be single sourced or if it's eligible for single source. And might also want to have procurement chime in on that. I believe that Ms. Sams is available and prepared to kind of discuss that, but I do think that's a relevant question and we need to look into that. Also, I don't believe that the MOU, which is the current tool that you're utilizing, has expired. And so you want to look at the terms for which you would renegotiate or begin any types of negotiation on that agreement. But again, I would defer to both legal as well as our procurement subject matter expert on that question.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Garrett, you have any other questions?
I do. In regards to this,
negotiate or begin.
I think somebody's got a replay going on somewhere.
I think that was Miss Sams chiming in. That was her. She just joined us, so I think that was her. She's out of the room, so I think that was her.
She's here. She just her video just popped up.
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As to whether or not this is sole source or not, from a procurement perspective, I don't think that would be appropriate at this time because, as you well know, there are other entities with the city of Augusta that can compete for this.
But Gold Cross owns the zone, which is issued by the state, and none of the other ambulance providers can own or operate the zone. So how would that happen?
You would simply do it under professional services.
That's not the question I asked.
Well, sir, can you repeat your question?
Gold Cross owns the zone, which
Yes,
is
sir.
issued by the state of Georgia. So none of the other ambulance services can operate in the zone unless Gold Cross allows it because they own the zone. So in my, reading through this, that is why I think this is a sole source issue.
Well, sir, for me, I don't think that it's a sole source issue because, as you said, Gold Cross is the provider of the loan, but they have not yet stated that they would not grant anyone else permission to join them or be a part of it.
Okay. Chairman, I still have one more question. And this is not for Ms. Sams, but this is for the committee. In regards to this conversation, I want to make a motion that we task the administrator and the attorney to negotiate and bring back to this committee their recommendations.
I would tend to second that motion.
I want to do a substitute motion.
Substitute.
Yeah.
Substitute.
Let me say, I'm going to make a substitute motion, but let me say something before I say it. We can go back and forth with this particular situation, but we know that eventually, whether we voted up or down, it'll be pushed to the regular commission, which we can come out with an entirely different type situation. I think what Commissioner Hassan is attempting to do is to put together a committee that can look at this in a global manner. He's attempting to put together a committee that will look at what's good for Augusta as well as what's amenable for Gold Cross. We're gonna need to look at the contract regardless of what. The attorney will be involved with the committee. The administrator will be at the head of the committee. I don't want to sit here and go back and forth all day with this. I think in the end process, a committee will be voted up to look at this, and the attorney and the administrator will be involved. I don't think that we can get away with just the attorney and the administrator in it, because we got too many people on the other side that are looking at it a little different from people that are particularly interested in supporting Gold Cross. I'm in the middle. I'm interested in supporting something that's good for Augusta. And some other people are looking at what's supportive of Augusta. What I like to do is make my substitute motion that we create the committee that will include the administrator and the attorney. We include Ben Hassan as the chair. We include Sammy Size. We include Dennis Williams. We include Brandon Garrett. And we include our chairman of the Public Safety Committee. You got some people that are leaning towards, in a way, they need to come to the middle part of that. So with that said, that's my substitute motion, that we create a committee with those people involved.
And I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you for that second. I saw Commissioner Sias's hand up. I'm calling on him, please.
The attorney also has his hand up.
I'll be real quick. What I heard from Miss Sam is very valid, but I would also remind my colleagues it's very difficult to procure something that you don't procure for something that you don't own. Technically, that's called a subsidy. A procurement is when you control and you're procuring services that you control. We don't control that, so that just want to remind them that we are not here in the position, as my colleague from the A said, is owned by Gold Cross. So there is no legal authority for Augusta to control or procure anything to a certain degree, unless, as Ms. Sam stated, we're invited to procure some, to render some other folks in there by Gold Cross. So I just want to make that point, and I'm out. Thank you, Chair.
And Commissioner, Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
That's why I made the recommendation that I made, so that those people who are truly interested in this situation can go behind the closed doors and or meet however you want to meet, hash this thing out, and bring us back a decision in 2 or 3 or 4 months, whenever the contract ends. That's the best bet here. Instead of going back and forth, create the committee so we can hash it out. Thank you.
Okay, and I appreciate that, Commissioner. You know, I think probably with the members of the committee that you have suggested, would probably be well inside of the scope of who would be involved in that, in the proper channels that would be involved in that, because you have clear representation of the committee with that.
Yes, sir.
So,
You got both sides with Al in there, and we need to come to the middle.
okay, does anybody else have anything?
Yes, sir.
And
if I
there's
may.
the attorney does.
Yes, sir. Mr. Brown?
I just would like to either get a clarification or make a clarification. This vote about this committee is really only if it goes through, whichever motion goes through, it's only a recommendation to the commission. Now you can have a committee on the committee level, but they would never have much authority or influence. This is only a recommendation to the committee, to the commission. This would have to really, the committee really needs to be approved by the commission. And it's okay for this committee to recommend a committee to the commission, but the approval need to be done by the commission. If this group is going to represent Augusta,
Yes.
a committee cannot appoint or select a committee to represent Augusta. They can only select a committee to recommend to the commission to consider them and make
Yes,
it
sir.
change there.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioner Franham?
Wouldn't this committee be a quorum, meaning that everything will be Gold Cross's business? I mean, like on the streets. I mean, isn't that true, attorney? That, I mean, we couldn't, that group of people would be a quorum, would it not?
A quorum of what?
Commissioners meeting in the same time.
I thought I heard 5 people.
Yeah, but it can't be more than 3 off a committee. Just clarify.
Yes, that was,
But you don't have 3 off the committee, do you?
Yes, sir. Yes, yes, sir. You have.
Who?
You
Yeah.
have, you
Mr.
have-
Clark, Mr. Dennis Williams, and Mr. Brandon Garrett.
Anytime you establish a committee by the commission, they have to meet in accordance with public, what you call that?
Open Meetings Act.
Open Meetings Act. If you establish a bona fide committee, it doesn't matter if who's the commissioners that's on there. Now, there are opportunities for that commission to meet in separate ways sometimes, but bottom line, that committee, when that is called to order and there's a quorum of those committee members, that is open to the public.
That is correct.
Yeah, and I'll just close it. I'll state for the record, I believe that we need to let the administrator and the attorney handle it, and I won't be supporting any committee. So,
Gotcha.
thank you.
Voted up or down, Mr. Clark?
any other questions? Okay, we
I
have.
have a statement to make. I think I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment?
Yes, Commissioner Hassan.
I think everybody here is well intent, but that was not what you're talking about for the administrator. Now, you can make any kind of motion we want, so let me be very clear. But my ask was to prepare the attorney, not to prepare the administrator to go and negotiate with Gold Cross. My ask was to begin to establish a committee to create parameters for us as a commission, as a city. What will we want? What do we think a service should look like? All of this was in-house conversation. It has nothing to do with Gold Cross at this time. Gold Cross has sent us an MOU, a draft MOU, which is their right to do. And I don't know if now somebody can correct me. Is anybody here on here who was sitting with Gold Cross when they draft the MOU? So we should have the same right. So that's all I'm saying, that we should want to know without and have to negotiate with them through their MOU. We should create parameters ourselves, and then we start those conversations. That's what I was asking. I wasn't asking somebody to start looking at a draft MOU they sent us or start negotiating with Gold Cross. That's what put us behind. Our first responsibility, and like my colleague Commissioner Franklin just mentioned about if we have this conversation, Gold Cross businesses on the street. Well, this concerns us more so than it concerns Gold Cross. And so I'm asking for a committee for us to create some specifications that we think what a service should look like, some benchmarks that we can measure if we're going to compensate them. That's what that was going to be my ask. And that's what I'm saying. I'm hoping that you'll send it over here or y'all follow that ask, because if you don't, you put us at a disadvantage as a city.
Vote it up. Vote it up. Down, whatever.
We have a substitute motion.
Yes, sir.
Vote, please.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Bobby Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Brandon Garrett.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. With no other business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen and lady.
You got two.
Ladies.
You got three, you might say, yeah.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Ms. Bonner, are you ready for administrative services?
Yes, sir.
Are there any additions or deletions?
Yes, sir. We do have a request. No, I'm sorry, we had a request for an addendum item for public services, but I don't think we addressed it, but well, go ahead. We have none for administrative service.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. If my colleagues don't mind, as well as my colleagues who are not on the committee, because some of them may have questions about it, I'd like to consent item 1, item number 2. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Ms. Bonner, the one that you sent us out at 10:43 was for administrative services, not for, yeah, okay, it's an addendum item.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, it's for this committee.
okay.
Yeah.
So you want to go back and tell us what that is, Ms. Bonner?
It's a request from the Planning and Development Department to authorize a study be done in relations to a GDOT grant for a study on Macaulay and Riceboro Road. They received a grant award and it's time sensitive. So
Okay.
they're asking that be considered for approval.
Are there any objections to being added to our agenda?
No.
No objections. Thank you, Commissioner Franklin. Consent item number 1, as well as the addendum item there. Item number 2, item number 3, item number 5, and item number 6.
You skipped 4.
I did skip 4. 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6.
Addendum item.
And that's what addendum item.
Addendum item.
Okay, Commissioner Hassan,
Yes, sir.
number 10.
What is number 10?
We just took care of that.
Delete.
Okay, I can live with that. And number 10, Ms. Bonner, we can remove it from the agenda.
Remove this one, delete it from the agenda? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So
Okay.
moved.
Second.
Mr. Bobby Williams. Mr. Franum and Mr. Bobby Williams.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, sir.
just a question. You didn't want to put 4 in there? Did you put 4 in there?
Oh, no, sir. No, sir.
No, sir. No, sir.
Oh,
Ms. Bonner,
hold
can you
on.
read number 4 for us, please?
Okay.
Hold on.
The
Is Commissioner Size on this committee?
Commissioners got, listen, we're not in the Senate of the state of the U.S. House, is it, Mr. Mayor? So you can get in where you fit in.
I can just pull it off the agenda next week.
Ms. Bonner, read item number 4 for us, please.
I mean, do we need to vote on the consent agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we had voted, Ms. Bonner. I apologize. We ready to vote?
Okay. You ready to vote? Mr. Hassan?
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Scott?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams?
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Next item, number 4, Ms. Bonner.
Item number 4 is to request approval of the comprehensive fleet management operations, maintenance, and replacement policy.
To my colleague, on a personal level, I don't want to, because I don't know what that looks like. We've been talking about for quite some time about upgrading our fleet policy and replacement. And so I had no idea what that looked like. I wish it had been sent to us first, and then we consider later time whether we want to approve it. So I'd like to hear from Ms. Dowell, so the administrator, around this item number 4.
Can I get something in quick?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
I have my hand. Commissioner, I totally agree with what you just said. I don't feel real comfortable at all for us to run over through this today. If you and your committee don't mind, I would really like for this to, if y'all would send this back to the next committee cycle to give us time to really dig into this, ask some questions offline, because this has been something that we got stuck with for many years, and now it shows up here as a agenda item ready for us to vote on. And that's normally the way things happen, but this policy, I think, really requires us to need the opportunity to ask a few questions and things offline and make some comparisons. For one, I don't see the old policy attached here as well, and that's just something I want to put these side by side. So that's my request of you and your committee, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Administrator, y'all can make a few comments around this here, highlight some points or whatever, but I don't disagree with my colleague just said, because it's been a long time coming, and just ask us to approve it, and that was just interesting for me as well.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, no problem at all. So we actually brought back the draft policy to the commission prior to the committee cycle being renewed back in January with a draft of the policy. But I think Commissioner Sias is correct. I did not notice that he actually requested in the meeting where we discussed it that the old policy be submitted as well. And so it was supposed to be submitted today. That's an oversight through my office, and we'll make sure to correct that.
The anti-discrimination policy is going to come up. I'm going to have Jeff send you a link so you can be on the call.
Mr. Brown,
There you go.
But I will say that the actual policy itself aligns with the request made by the commission in December, where we extended the life of those vehicles because of the utilization report showing that many of our vehicles have been greatly underutilized, and the mileage request that I think the majority of the commission wanted to see higher mileage rates before we purchase new vehicles and retire old ones. So the policy simply combines those dated policies and brings that in line. So I believe it takes the number up to 175 for non-public safety vehicles and up to 150 for public safety vehicles. That's also in line with what others in the region are doing and the current use of our vehicles. So we have brought it before to the commission, and there was a consensus in support of it. But what has failed to be done, as pointed out by Commissioner Sias, is it was supposed to have a line-by-line comparison of the old policy and the new. And so we'll correct that and have it ready for the next cycle.
Any other comments around this issue?
Make a motion to send it to the next committee cycle.
Second. Voting, Ms. Bonner.
Mr. Sun,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Tranum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries unanimously to
Thank you.
the next committee meeting.
Mr. Hassan,
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
can we put 8 and 9 together?
Yeah, but I'm on 7 now. We get there.
Okay.
Commissioner,
Sir?
just wanted to highlight, while that comparison was not in there, both policies are in your binders though.
Okay.
I know you mentioned that they were not in there, but they are in the binders as
Okay.
requested. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the heads up. Thank you. Item number 7, Ms. Bonner.
Item number 7 is an update from the Housing Community Development Department relative to Augustus Emergency Rental Assistance Program implementation with United Way of the CSRA.
Yeah, I requested to try to get an update on this from Director Welcher, administrator, about how we're in this thus far. I don't have to be a full-throated one, but I know they're doing some things. Just give us a breast of, I think this is about the $6 million that they received, and just give us an update on the status of it. Mr. Welcher, go ahead.
I think we also have, Mr. Commissioner, we need to allow the United Way to actually join as well. They're actually helping to provide the update because they're the service provider.
Mr. Welcher.
They are the only service provider.
Mr. Welcher, what's the name of the person from United Way?
Brittany Burnett.
Okay, I got her. She's coming in.
We want to break the ice on it on the conversation then. We get started.
We do, sir. Okay, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and other members of the commission, Mr. Mayor. A couple weeks back, you agreed to accept $6 million from the U.S. Treasury to be able to move forward implementation of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, known as SIVE Relief is the name that we've given it. So we're happy to report to date that we've gone live. We do have United Way here with us, but we'll have Daniel Evans of my team to go ahead and give you an overview in regards to the programmatic process, intake, and so forth and so forth.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this. So as the director said, we are very excited to be full swing with our partners at United Way in launching this rental assistance program. I'll give you some basic parameters, and then I believe Ms. Burnett from United Way will speak to some of the details about how folks in our community can best access these services. So in summation, this program is afforded from the last coronavirus relief bill, and it provides Augusta with the opportunity to help its residents who are facing rental arrearages or past due rent and utility bills for the last 12 months, whose household is at 80% of the area median income or below. They can have assistance with up to 12 months of those bills to bring them current and to hopefully drive housing stability with what has certainly been uncertain times for residents in our community. While the program does focus exclusively on rental assistance, I do want to highlight that the ability to also address utility bills, if a household may only be behind on their utility bills as an example, those can also be addressed to ensure that stable housing is the outcome for everyone that is assisted with the program. Ms. Burnett, if it's all right, can give us some details about how our residents are able to access these services through United Way's programming.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. And thank you for the time just to give you an update about this program. You know, we are thrilled to partner with the city and HCD to provide really critical rental and utilities relief to the residents of Richmond County. And I'm sure you probably all remember a few weeks ago when news from a commission meeting hit the mainstream news, and I'll tell you that the phone started ringing off the hook at the HCD offices, and so they've done a great job, really putting folks into what we're calling into a queue to make sure that we are managing this program really on a first come first serve basis. So we've got the folks that started calling in back, I think that February 10th was when that started. But our program at United Way with us really managing the day-to-day and the screening and the implementation of this started last week. So if someone in Richmond County does meet the criteria, what we are asking them to do is they can go onto the United Way website, and there's a link they can click where it asks just some basic information about them. And really that adds them to the running queue of people who are in line to receive assistance. This will ensure that we do maintain a first come, first serve process. In addition to going to our website, if they want, they can simply text the word rent to 50503. A form comes up, they can fill it out on their mobile device, and that also puts them into this same queue. The third option would be for people to call 211, which I think many of you know is our first call for community help in our area. But what we also realize is that if everyone calls 211, that will jam up those lines. People may get frustrated as they're waiting for their call to be answered. So we are really driving people to submit their information online first via the website or the text option. And then lastly would be the phone. So what's happened so far? So from the calls that HCD originally took in, and then combined with really when we started taking in inquiries last Wednesday, right now we've got 1,400 residents that are in the queue. So now we all know that some of those folks may be duplicated. Some of those folks may not even live in the area, but we have inquiries right now from about 1,400 people. So our team at 211 they're starting from the very beginning and they're calling residents back. And we've got a checklist of what we need to go through to verify their residency, to verify their income, to show they have been impacted by COVID in one way or the other. But we've got a checklist of the requirements on our end, and we need documents from them. We also need documents from the landlord. And then another piece that we are adding that I honestly don't know if any other municipality is doing is that we have a home inspection that happens. So we've got someone that will get an assignment to go to a certain home, and they've got a checklist of about 15 items that they need to check off as a habitability review. Then that will ensure that we are decreasing the likelihood of fraud and making sure that honestly, the house that tenants are in are all livable and habitable environments for them. So it's been a very, very busy week. We put this and stood this program up very, very quickly. And our 211 agents are calling people back as quickly as they can, but understand it also then takes time for those tenants to return documents to us, for the habitability study to be complete, the landlord to give us information, then for us to review that whole package to then get payments made back out to the landlords and to the utility providers. But that has started, and we've got an automated process to make all of that happen so that we can do this as efficiently as possible and help as many residents as possible. So that's a high level overview. Daniel, I don't know if you want to mention anything else or if we want to open it up for questions, but it's real busy over on our end as we really get this kicked off.
I do have some questions myself, but I'm going to reserve mine to the end of this. Mr. Mayor, would you like to make a comment? I have a question.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to direct this question to the presenter, specifically around the check and the checklist. If that checklist is tied to the landlord, then can you clarify for us? Because if I'm a tenant, all I should need is an eviction notice and some information that says I'm behind in my rent. I want to understand why we're doing, quote, a checklist to determine fraud. I don't get the nexus there.
Daniel, do you want to speak to that point?
Sure. Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, this is Daniel Evans with HCD. To address that concern, what she's referring to, Ms. Burnett referred to, is a habitability inspection to ensure that the units that we support with payment to landlords are decent, sanitary, and safe. So it's a very linear checklist that we use with all of our federal assistance, similar to what we use with our homeless service programming. To Ms. Burnett's point about the fraud, it provides an opportunity to ensure that the persons are living where they state. And we don't see it as an impediment from a timing perspective to the process, but it does ensure due diligence to make sure, for lack of a better phrase, that we do not provide financial support to a slumlord situation. We have worked out in the partnership relationship the ability for persons that may be staying somewhere that isn't decent, sanitary, and safe to be referred back to HCD to receive services from a different program that can help them ensure they have housing stability as well.
Mr. Chairman, if I may follow up.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, so I hear that, but I'm still trying to draw a line or demarcation between the challenges of the landlord and their providing suitable housing for someone versus me requesting rental assistance through the Emergency Relief Assistance Program. Those are two separate issues there.
Yes, sir. So the connection for us really is to ensure that the unit for the tenant that because we are making payments directly to landlords on behalf of the tenants. And so the goal is to ensure that that landlord is maintaining a decent, safe, and sanitary environment. That is as simple as the doors locked, the fire alarms work, the basic plumbing is operable. So it's not an extensive review by any measure. And again, the goal being to ensure housing stability at the end result, whether that be in some instances where that housing that they're requesting assistance for, it does not meet those conditions and essentially faces condemnation. We have a resource back at HCD where we can assist, again, the tenant, not necessarily the landlord, in addressing those concerns. But if a house is on the verge of condemnation, we would want to ensure that the person has a more stable housing situation than that available to them.
Well, I appreciate that. Follow-up question, Mr. Chairman. Really a two-part question. One, in the event that you find the place unsuitable, what is the recourse towards the landlord? And number two, who, as it relates to this housing, who has to be home for this check to take place?
So I can address your second question first, sir. The inspection can be performed with either the resident or the landlord available for access to the unit. There's not a specific requirement for either one to be there. And again, HCD, as in our role in the partnership, would spearhead any referrals that come back to us for what we would call not decent housing situations, and we would work in partnership with the city's code enforcement team to assure that that property is addressed appropriately. But first, internally here at HCD, we would work to serve the client and ensure that that resident is stably housed, whether that be where they are or in a new unit potentially, if the situation was to dictate that.
Mr. Mayor, that's it?
What's the timeline on them getting adequate housing in the event that you have to find a suitable place for them?
Well, we would certainly operate, sir, in a urgent manner. So ASAP is usually our course of order when we're addressing that. We would not be instigating any action that would lead to them being removed from the unit they are at. We currently will and continue to work with tenants to get information to their landlords to ensure their stability. So we wouldn't be taking any action that would lead to that person being evicted or anything of that nature through our programming. But again, we would kind of take it on a case-by-case basis, as we certainly hope that the vast majority of folks that are in need of assistance won't come to this dire end. But we would seek to turn them around in line with our other program services that we provide in rapid rehousing, which by its name moves very rapidly and seeks to place people as soon as we can into a stable permanent housing location.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have a question then to
Mr. Chairman, I have a.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a quick question. Mr. Evans, you mentioned that if a person fell into this category of living in a home that a slumlord is managing, that there are some services that they could potentially have access to. Are you at liberty to share with us what services that may be? Because I asked that question. My only concern is that I can point out to you several homes within a 10, 15-mile radius of my home that may fall into the category that you speak of, but that person in that home may need somewhere to go. They may be on the verge of eviction. I had a couple people call me recently who are in fact on the verge of eviction. And they may be in this category. So what services would be at their disposal? Say you do a home inspection and realize, hey, this house is not up to par. What could they get next?
So the most direct resource we would turn to, and it does have an income qualification requirement on it. It's a little different than the rental assistance program, but generally with our HUD-funded homeless prevention programming, one of the activities you can engage in if a person who's at risk of experiencing homelessness is in a unit as we're describing that is not suitable for human habitation, or if, for instance, in a similar scenario, a landlord was not willing to work with the tenant to address arrearages, One of the activities you can actually perform under HUD's homeless prevention is to rehouse that person in a new unit. It's still considered a prevention activity because the effort is to prevent them from experiencing an episode of homelessness. So that is the principal resource we would fall on. Again, that's a income restriction for households that are at the 50% area median income level to meet federal compliance. But that would be our first turn to see if we could address the situation of helping them with the costs of moving to a new unit, to include deposits and first month's rent, as well as utility connection fees and deposits, to get them into a stable unit as an alternative to the one that they're in that may not be suitable. Similar situations will occur and have occurred in the past if a landlord will just not work with a client or choose not to vendorize. In our case with the city of Augusta, in this program's instance, if they choose not to vendorize with United Way, we would have to look at an alternative resource that would provide stable housing to the resident to work around that that landlord obstruction.
But this only applies to homes that are on the verge of being condemned. This wouldn't apply to a home that you come in and maybe it's not as tidy on the inside as we'd like it to be, or the outside isn't as tidied up. This is applying to folks whose home is on the verge of just being condemned. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, absolutely, Commissioner. Yeah. So the code, the standard is more about code deficiencies than aesthetics. And again, it gets down to secure access, so doors and windows that shut and lock, plumbing working, electricity working, smoke detectors working, basic infrastructure of the home being in compliance with the code as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I don't see anybody. I'm going to ask a couple of my questions here. Ms. Burnett, you mentioned about 1,400 persons you've heard from, and I agree with you. Some of those are duplications, some of them may be out of area. Is it safe to say we can take 50% of them, or would you like to move below that to say about 500 of them that you're comfortable with? Maybe
I think we all wish we had the crystal ball to tell us that information. And honestly, I think that as we start working through this queue, we'll be able to easily see, if someone is requesting, if they're submitting a request once every 3 days, once a week. We know when it becomes a time of desperation, people will do anything and maybe submit every day or call us every day, and then also call HCD every day. So at this point, because we're starting at the very beginning of the queue, we're not experiencing duplicates yet today. But I'll be curious to report back to you the number that we do see, because the other thing to consider is we've got, whenever we make an outgoing call to anyone who has submitted their information, we're tracking that. And we will not just call them once and then, forget about it, but we've got a series of follow-up calls to make to them to ensure that we are reaching out with enough, adequate timelines and number of touches to make sure that they're getting the support they need. Unfortunately, I have no idea about duplicates at this point, but we do know that they are in fact in there. I wish I had a stronger answer, but when I hopefully come back to present next, we'll have a better idea because we'll have worked more of the queue.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Daniels, what criteria came with the 6 million? I'm not saying what you have in place now, but in terms of helping being rental assistance and stuff, what criteria in terms of qualifications came with that, if any at all?
Yes, sir. So it is a lot more linear, I will say, than you're typically hearing us discuss when it comes to programming from Housing and Urban Development. As a funding stream from the Treasury, it was very simple and to the point. And with the support of obviously my director and the administrator in putting the program together, we went with maximum eligibilities for our rollout here in Augusta. So what you've heard us describe in terms of the 80% area median income for eligibility was what the regulation allowed for. The 12 months of arrearages going back 12 months to March of 2020 to address past due rent and utility bills was the maximum amount allowed by the regulation that was provided by Treasury. And I guess the other big stipulation is that your outcomes must be focused on housing stability. So services that you provide, this gets back again to the comment about the suitable living environment. All efforts that you expend under this program have to lead to the goal of ensuring that residents assisted maintain stable housing. And then lastly, I guess the biggest term you would want to know is that this is under a tight timeline. We are operating with these funds from Treasury until December 31st of this year, 2021. So our hope and expectation is to be one of those high-performing communities that can be considered for potential additional funds through this stream and future legislation for similar services as we continue to navigate through the onset, the tail end of this pandemic.
I'm gonna leave my questions alone, but I'm gonna suggest, and I'm hoping my colleagues will support me, I guess at the full commission or what have you, that they need to take on a couple more vendors. They would never get to it with one vendor, United Way, simply trying to do this. Trying to do their best. I don't think they'll get to in a very timely and efficient manner to serve as many people possible, especially when you said December of this year. We're talking about spending $6 million. I don't know what the breakout is there, but I think we need to bring a couple more vendors on board to help in doing this for sure. Mr. Mayor, you got a statement, and I'm gonna move on from there. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I know that this was a discussion matter on your agenda, and might I offer the suggestion that as we simply take this to the full commission, we revisit that. You've got a very strong partner in the ability to administer these resources, but more importantly, to handle the intake process. And when I think about other communities who are doing similar efforts, I think about Gwinnett County, for example, one of the largest, most populous counties in the state of Georgia. They've taken a similar approach to partner with United Way there, and they're seeing success, perhaps the most diverse county in America. And so what I will counter with is we're just 1 week into it. Let's move forward with this. If we need any additional support, it will be on housing support as opposed to the process around who actually helps administer it. We need housing support. Absent having additional housing support, we very well could find ourselves with the new homeless in Augusta. That's what we don't want. And so I want to commend Mr. Evans and his team leading the charge on this, and Brittany and the team from United Way for helping to stand this up. Another partner that I want to bring into this conversation very swiftly is our Civil and Magistrate Court. In a conversation most recently with Judge LaJoy Williamson, they become the first line of defense and or entry for those folks who are trying to respond to their eviction notices. And she needs collateral, she needs material to be able to help people push themselves into the United Way gate and working. We've got some ideas about that. Just talking with her through that process, she is a ready and a willing partner to help us stand this up, to keep people off the streets and in their homes. And so, Daniel, I would urge you to get her involved in this conversation. That's what I offer, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we get a motion to receive this information?
Motion to receive.
Second.
Voting, Ms. Bala.
Mr. Sun,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Scott,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams. Mr. Bobby
Yes, ma'am.
Williams, okay,
Yes, ma'am.
that motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Bala, we got number 8 and number 9 here. There are 2 different names tied to it, and so I need to speak to both of them. But go ahead and read it. I think it's pretty much the same thing. You can go ahead and read them for me, if you don't mind.
Are you going to
Read
take
them
them as companion items? Is that what you're saying?
I would like to take them as companion, if with their support. I don't know. Mr.
Oh,
Mayor, Jordan, do you have a problem with that?
I don't have a problem with that. Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. What I'd like to do is pull item number 8. And as we talk about number 9, I think that's a very swift action based on what the previous motion of the commission was. So if we could delete number 8.
Okay. Any objection against deleting number 8? Delete without objection. All right. Number 9, Ms. Bonner.
Item number 9 is discuss the draft of an anti-discrimination ordinance prepared by the Law Department and to determine the path forward. requested by Commissioner Jordan Johnson.
Mr. Jordan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to just go ahead and yield the floor over to our attorney and allow him to present the draft ordinance that he has presented.
I don't see Denise.
Okay. She went to bed.
Attorney Brown, Mr. Chairman, is that in order?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's
Okay.
fine.
All right.
Go ahead. You muted. You muted, Attorney Brown.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, committee members and commissioners, Mayor, the commission had requested the law department draft an anti-discrimination ordinance. We have included that draft in your agenda book. There are many components to this proposed ordinance. And I believe that given the nature of it and given the demands of this ordinance, that the commission will need time. I don't know if this is an appropriate setting to do it, but it's going to need time to discuss and understand each of the components of this ordinance so that it will know what it's putting on the streets. This ordinance is also going to take some resources in terms of human resources and also some coordination with other entities such as the U.S. Marshal Office, as well as the Richmond County Civil and Magistrate Court will all have a part of this proposed ordinance. So I will ask the chair, how do they wish to proceed, or regarding an explanation of this ordinance as well as implementation of the ordinance?
Commissioner Jordan, you got a response for that?
Yes, sir. If I would like to maybe just get a good baseline, rundown of what the basis of this ordinance would be based off of what you drafted. And then I'm sure the committee would make a determination after that. But Mr. Brown, are you able to just give a baseline run through of what this ordinance, what it means, the processes, things of that nature?
Well, this ordinance, first thing I think we were going to go through is that what does this ordinance prohibit? The unlawful practices of this ordinance, which is on page 2, is basically using the base of race, religion, color, sex, disability, national origin, ancestry, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, military service. This ordinance make the use or discrimination of individuals based upon that in terms of hiring them or discharging them, refusing to allow them to rent real property or housing services or occupying rental homes. It makes, as well as the purchase of goods and services by any business, it makes it illegal on a city level. What's regulated by this ordinance are businesses, and businesses are defined as any person conducting business in Augusta which requires a license or permit from Augusta. So this would regulate those businesses. It also highlights that in the exclusion from discriminatory practice, this ordinance would not be a discriminatory practice if a religious corporation or association that employs individuals to perform religious activities, this would not regulate such an organization, nor would it regulate an employer who observes conditions of affirmative action program or a business, and a business is not required to hire an unqualified or an incompetent person in order to meet this statute. One of the key elements of this program that I think the commission needs a separate opportunity to look at would be how this ordinance would be enforced. This ordinance, as written or proposed to you, would include the person filing a complaint if someone felt they were discriminated against in violation of this ordinance. They would they will go, their first stop would be to Augusta Compliance Department. They will file with Augusta Compliance Department. The forms that they need would be provided to them by the Compliance Department. The Compliance Department would investigate the matter, and it would be referred to what we label as a mediator. A mediator would
Mr. Chairman.
attempt.
Yeah.
The mediator would attempt.
Yeah. Hold on, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jordan, you all right? Before I can go to the mayor on this?
Yes, I'm okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that. The commissioner from the first asked the attorney if he would present his draft ordinance. I believe that he may have distributed a copy of that. In my estimation, it would be more appropriate if he took his draft ordinance and he walked us through it, whether that's him putting it up on the screen and showing us as he's walking through it section by section, showing us what the statutory requirements are, showing us what the exclusions are. That would be helpful if he did that.
Mr. Mayor, can you excuse me for a moment? I'm gonna have to leave. My therapist just arrived, so the vice chair needs to take over this if you don't mind. I got to go. And I apologize.
All right, that's, yes, sir. Ms. Scott?
Bye, Commissioner.
Ms. Scott, can I continue?
Yes, sir.
I'm coming down.
Yeah, so again, it would be prudent if we had the attorney who's drafted this walk us through it from that standpoint. It's very difficult to ascertain really what he's saying beyond the legalese without him walking us through what his draft document is. I think that's what the commissioner from the first asked him to do.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Sayers?
Thank you. I got some in relationship to what the mayor said and what was said before then. First off, and I have a copy of the draft in my hand and I was following through. Got a couple questions for the attorney. In looking at this draft, and I saw a couple of references to U.S. code for Mr. Attorney. The first question is, should there be a reference in this ordinance that refers to all the U.S. codes or state statutes, U.S. statutes that this ordinance is using as a basis? Should that be there?
I'm not quite following your question.
In other words, if you look at page, if you look at, let me see what page that was. It was talking about nonprofit agencies where you had, matter of fact, on page 1, where you make a reference under disability, you reference that with the code 42 USC 1210. And I'm saying in the other things where we talking about what we are able to do in this ordinance, should we have a reference to federal and state statutes that we are using as a basis to build this ordinance, or is just what we think?
This, I can't see my screen anymore, but I guess I can still hear you. This is itself a local ordinance. This is not an enforcement of a federal code. This is actually a local code that the commission requested be drafted. The federal codes, of course, are well established, but the jurisdiction to hearing those complaints would, of course, be federal court. Hearing a local code affords local citizens the opportunity to go to a local court with a lot more ease than they probably would a federal court.
And I don't disagree with you. I'm just asking, should our local code have those things as references? A part of the foundation? That's what
I believe that there's no need to recreate definitions that are federally recognized. So a reference to the federal code establishes what is meant, since there are years of experience in litigation regarding those. So that would be very clear.
Okay. Second question. When we talk about people who will go out and say investigate a complaint. Now, as we know, when people go to the EEOC in Atlanta or wherever that is there, they have, and I'm gonna just say I've never been there. So, but we've had to deal with their rulings. So the bottom line is, do we have people of the same competence, the same knowledge, the same skill level to go out and investigate complaints through private entities where we be looking into their records and everything else? That's my question there.
You're muted, Mr. Brown.
I'm glad you asked that question. That's part of my point. It is. Let me just say what I really think, if I may. I believe that to discuss this ordinance, the first step that should be taken is for the commission to have a workshop with this ordinance. This will be a long process going through this ordinance because it will require human resources. If you're going to have a local ordinance, so where is the enforcement going to be? The best place we saw would be the compliance department. It doesn't mean necessarily the people who are in the compliance department now, but if we're going to have this ordinance, we have to have a person capable of doing what needs to be done. And the first thing would be not only the intake, but the investigation of that matter. A person competent to investigate these, which would be an EEO officer, would do the investigation. So we have to make sure the compliance department has the personnel it needs to do that investigation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Commissioner Franklin.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Attorney, how long do you think it would take you to, Mr. Chairman, if I can ask the attorney a question, please? Sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
Attorney, how long do you think it would take you to have everything together so we can do a workshop? How much time do you need before we do this workshop?
We could do the workshop at the commission's earliest convenience.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can I make a motion that we do a workshop in the next 30 days on this agenda item?
Second.
Vote, Ms. Bonner.
Okay. Miss Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Franum,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Bobby Williams.
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries with Mr. Hassan out.
Thank you.
I believe that's all.
Yes, ma'am. Good meeting, Madam Chairman.
Are we ready for engineering?
Yes, sir, we are. Give me a minute. Yeah. We are.
All right, I'd like to call engineering services to order. If I can, I would like to consent items number 1, 3, 4, and 5.
Items 1, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, consent.
Mr. Chairman, can we also include number 6?
I actually had a question on that.
Okay, all right.
Can I get a motion for that?
So move.
Second.
Voting?
Okay, Mr. Garrett,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that motion carries with Mr. Hassan out.
Yeah, what was those items again?
1, 3, 4, and 5.
4, 5.
Thank you.
All righty. Item number 2, please.
Item number 2 is approve amendment number 9 to agreement with ESG operations to establish the final budget amount for 2021.
I believe Commissioner McKnight had some questions about this.
No, are we gonna go ahead and just vote, Commissioner Garrett? I got a little issue going on here. We're gonna go ahead and vote. I'm sorry about that.
You said you had some questions about it, so that's why I pulled it.
Yeah, I'm gonna skip the questions. I'll if we're gonna vote on it, I'll vote. I got something going on with my ear. So,
Oh, okay. Well, with that being said, I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Is that to approve?
Second. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Garrett, second. Okay,
excuse me, Ms. Bonner, I'm sorry. I thought we're gonna vote on that, correct? Y'all, I apologize.
yes, ma'am. Okay,
Okay, go ahead.
we're voting, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Garrett,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight.
No, ma'am.
That motion
All right.
fails 2-1 with Mr. Hassan out.
Thank you. And item number 6, please.
Item number 6 is to authorize the execution of a joint funding agreement with the U.S. Department of Interior, U.S. Genealogical Survey for the operation, modeling, analyzing, and monitoring wells to investigate water levels and water quality for Augusta's groundwater production facilities.
Do we have anybody available that could answer a quick question on this? I'm assuming that would come from either engineering or utilities.
I'm bringing in Dr. Malik.
Utilities,
Yeah,
West
both are
Bynum is
available.
the end. Monitoring wells to investigate water levels and water quality for Augusta's groundwater production facility.
The
Utilities
utility-
submitted the agenda item. Mr. Administrator, you,
Yes, Mr. Bynum is actually on and ready to join. I think we just
Okay.
got to let him in.
okay, thank you.
No, ma'am.
Hey, Director, how are you?
Very good. How are y'all today?
Good. Good to see you joining us. Hope your first week here is going well.
It is.
In regards to item number 6 here, I just have one quick question. Kind of stuck out to me for this authorization was about the investigating water levels and water quality. Is this funding agreement with the USGS, is this something that already exists? And are we just, a new agreement in place, or is this something new?
It's work that's been continuing for about 15 years now. So it's an ongoing continued investigation of the groundwater resources in Augusta.
Okay. That's really the only question that I had. I just wanted some clarification on just the way it was worded. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. You voted,
Voting.
sir?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Mr. Garrett,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. McKnight.
I believe she has left us.
Okay, you don't have a quorum, so we'll move that forward with no recommendation, sir.
Oh, all righty. Well, that concludes our engineering services. I appreciate everybody's efforts into this. Thank you.
Great meeting, Mr. Chairman.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Madam Chair, Madam Clerk, are we ready to call finance to order?
Yes, sir, we are. We're ready.
Well, finance want to first pose a complaint of being last all the time, but we'll get over it. We know
You're
we
in the
only have a few
rotation,
left.
sir. We got the rotation coming up.
All right. I'd like to get a
Still
motion.
gonna be last.
I'd like to get a motion to consent items 1 and 2.
Motion to,
We have a motion. Do we have a
Scott?
second?
Okay.
Have a motion. We have a motion. Can I get a second? I'll
That's coming
second
from
it.
you. Okay.
All right. Let's vote, Ms. Bonner.
Mr. Sias,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dennis Williams,
Muted. Dennis, you're muted, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
okay. Ms. McKnight, She's out. Ms. Scott?
Yes, ma'am.
That motion carries with Ms. McKnight out.
My Lord.
That concludes finance. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Simon, you should have been first to go today.
Well, I got to stay in the rotation.
That concludes, right, Ms. Bonner?
Yes, sir.
All right, you guys have a good day.
Everybody take care.
See y'all later.